You're all gonna die.
Will be terrorized.
I had one of those dreams last night.
It's a boy!
Your birth was a curse on the whole of humanity. I will not allow it to happen again.
We'll see, bitch. We'll just see.
I must be released from my earthly prison. How? Look for me in the tower.
I'm calling about my wayward ex-son Daniel, who's been acting like an ungrateful, unmanageable dickweed ever since he was seduced by that bimbo slut, poor Alice.
Mom? Hey, Daddy! Better not dream and drive! Hylas! Wanna make babies?
What's wrong with me?
Nothing. You're just a little pregnant.
Bon appetit, bitch!
Time to die, you scar-faced lint dick!
Faster than a bastard maniac!
All right, Kruger. This time it's for keeps.
Don't talk with your mouth full, dear.
You are what you eat!
Do unborn babies dream? Yeah, I do.
As the fetus develops, it can spend up to 70% of its day in a dream state.
Kids, always a disappointment.
Two of us have died in the past 2 days. Does that strike you as particularly normal?
School's out, Cougar.
Hi, this is Tony Odell from Chopping Mall, and you're listening to The Hysteria Continues.
And indeed you are. Welcome back to The Hysteria Continues, episode 181, and this time we're back to Elm Street with A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 5, The Dream Child. And this is Erik's pick. So Erik, are you excited to be back skipping rope on Elm Street?
I am. And this time, Kurzweil, it's for keeps!
Would you keep my baby, Erik?
I suppose.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you. And and Joseph, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. I have to say that was a great intro, Erik.
It was.
Thank you.
Surpassed yourself. So let's see if your joke of the week measures up.
Do I have a joke of the week?
Well, you better start thinking.
I better start thinking. I don't actually have one.
Well, you've got 5 seconds to come up with one. That's usually what happens.
Yeah, is usually what happens.
Yes. Right, we've got a whole episode now.
Cap on.
Nathan, how are you doing?
I'm doing very, very well.
Excellent. And you have a hangover this morning, if I may be so bold.
Yeah, a slight one. I do. A friend of mine came up from out of town, so I drank a little last night, smoked, all that fun stuff.
Okay. Well, I wouldn't know what a hangover was like, Nathan. So, but I'm sure it must be.
Neither would I. Because you never stop drinking.
Well, exactly. Well, that's the trick. So, but yes, we are back to Elm Street this time. So we're very excited, and it's back on one of the major franchises after we've been going back to some rather snowy wastes with Iced and Moonstalker. We're back on I would say big budget, or relatively big budget, slasher movies, one of the big franchises of the 1980s. But before we get on to that, let's have a little chat about what we've been watching recently. So, Joseph, have you seen anything of note in the last week or so?
The only thing I've seen this week, there's a show on YouTube called The Angry Video Game Nerd. It's been on for years, and the guy James Rolfe, who plays the nerd, he's a big movie fan, and he's got like one of the biggest movie collections I've ever seen in my life. So I've always been a fan of that show, even though I'm not a big video game fan, because he incorporates a lot of horror references, and he's got another show he does with 3 other guys, kind of like our show, called Cinemassacre Rental Reviews. Basically, they sit in his basement that he's turned into this old retro-looking video store, and they review bad movies. And it's a really fun show. But anyway, I watched the Angry Video Game Nerd movie, and it was pretty enjoyable if you like that kind of stuff. A lot of horror references. Pretty good effects for such a minuscule budget. It's obviously kind of throwing kind of an homage toward like the old 50s and 60s B movies where they use miniatures like little toy cars as actual cars in long shots and stuff like that. So it's kind of got that kitschy fun to it. I'd say a lot of our listeners are probably well aware who James Rolfe is. So if you haven't seen the Angry Video Game Nerd movie, it's pretty good. I like his shows on YouTube better, but the movie was a lot of fun. It was kind of a nostalgia kick. So thumbs up for that movie.
Excellent. Okay. Keep an eye out for that. I don't know. The other guys, are you aware of that?
Not aware of the movie, but I am aware of Angry Video Game Nerd or whatever the correct title is. I watched him do he does an analysis of the Friday the 13th game for Nintendo, I think, which was really funny.
Yeah.
But it's notorious for being a particularly bad game, I think. So.
Well, I should also mention that he did one on Nightmare on Elm Street too, and he's got a friend who does a lot of videos with him named Mike Matei. He played Jason and Freddy in both these episodes, and they did a really good job of capturing that kind of Crystal Lake and Elm Street atmosphere in this silly kind of nerdy video game retrospective. It was a lot of fun. Check those episodes out. They're on YouTube.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you. Nathan, what about you? Are you a fan?
I mean, like Erik, I've seen that one, but I haven't watched a lot of his stuff because I'm not really a video game kind of guy. So I haven't watched a lot of it, but I did watch the Friday the 13th game one he did, and I watched the Nightmare on Elm Street game one that he did, and they were both pretty funny because I remember those, but that's about the only ones that I do remember aside from Mario.
Cool.
Yeah, you should check out some of his. He does like his single movie reviews by himself, but he does that other one, that Cinemassacre rental reviews with the other three guys. You should definitely check that out because it's so cool. It's like I said, he's got this huge collection. Like probably no disrespect to you, Justin, but it probably puts you to shame. It's just that huge, and he's turned basically this basement into this actual video store. It's incredible.
Cool. Okay.
I just think that's an interesting soundbite there. If somebody just walked in that conversation, Joseph said he'd put you to shame, Justin. It's just that huge.
Oh, yes. Cue Sid James sound effect if I still had any of those. Anything else, Joseph?
I feel like I was starting to watch something and I didn't finish it, but that's all I can think of at the moment. So that's it.
Okay, right. Well, thank you, Joseph. And, Nathan, what are your views on Manila Luzon being kicked off All Stars?
I'm not very happy about it. I'm like, she was my front runner to win. What are your views about it, Justin?
Well, I wasn't very happy, although I did think she was. I don't think either her or Latrice Royale have come across particularly well this season.
To me, especially Latrice, because, I mean, Latrice, I love Latrice, but, I mean, it's always like a gown and a big wig. Like, her look it's pretty predictable, I think, every time she goes out on the runway.
Also, she hasn't really been very funny this time, has she? She's not kind of been, seems a bit low energy.
Seems kind of cranky.
So just in case, anyway, sorry, just off on Dragstar All Stars, but I haven't seen the latest episode, so I won't talk about that anyway. And they say that has all been, so it's not really a spoiler. But apart from that, Nathan, what have you been watching?
I haven't got to watch much horror because it's only been a week since we recorded. Of course, I did watch Friday 13th Part 5 again last night with my friend. I just have a lot of fun with that movie. One other movie I watched recently, which is real life horror, not necessarily a horror movie, but it's on Netflix. It's called Abducted in Plain Sight. I highly recommend going and watching this without looking up any information on it, because it is one of the most twisted documentaries I've ever seen, and it's so outlandish that at first I was thinking to myself, am I watching a mockumentary or is this supposed to be real? But I looked it up and all this stuff really did happen, but it is completely insane. And I don't want to even describe it because I'm like, it's better to go in blind, but you won't believe the stuff that happens in this documentary when this girl gets abducted by a family friend. I'm still in shock over the stuff that happens in this documentary. So I highly recommend it.
Is it more outlandish than that one movie where that girl's forced to strip inside the restaurant?
I would say, to me, yes, because the stuff that goes down in this movie with the parents of this girl that gets kidnapped, I couldn't believe it. I really couldn't.
Okay, I got that on my watch list. I'm going to watch that today.
You got to watch it and let me know what you thought, because it's insanity to me.
So it's Netflix.
Yes,
I think I saw it pop up on
produced
my
by Netflix, so it should be on all y'all's Netflixes. I know Eric's not really a big fan of true crime, but this to me is more about this like family drama than about the kidnapping, even in and of itself.
What did you say it was called again, Nathan?
Abducted in Plain Sight.
Let's see if it's on.
Cool.
Yep.
So that's
it's on Netflix as well. Yeah.
I would really love to hear your guys' thoughts on it, because it's so much more than what you think just from looking at the title.
Cool. Thank you. Well, I'll check that out. I might watch that later tonight. So thank you. Is there anything else, Nathan?
No, that's it.
Okay. Well, what about you, Erik?
Okay. Well, I watched the new Hysteria last night. I approached this assuming I was going to hate it, because it was just the advanced word on it was that it was completely unrelated to the original. It was done by a sort of highbrow director, so I thought, the horror element is going to be pushed to the background, and it's going to be a psychological drama or something instead. And also the 2-hour 20-minute running time was kind of putting me off, but much to my surprise, I actually really liked it. It is very much a full-on horror movie. It's very much a supernatural witch story, which surprised me, because I thought it was going to go down that route of films like The Witch or Hereditary or stuff like that, where the lines between reality and supernatural are blurred to a degree where people can say, maybe it was all in their imagination. In this case, nothing is in anyone's imagination. It's very supernatural. It's very gory. Well, I suppose not gory is probably not the right word, but it's it can be quite vicious. The horror sequences are really quite intense and very effective in it. There's sort of supernatural bone breaking, and there's this hidden room where deformed ex-students who have tried to leave the dance academy are sort of locked away in this kind of limbo. Just the whole film has this real nightmarish quality about it that I really liked. It's not as colourful or vibrant to look at as the Argento original, and it has kind of a drab palette, but it looks very 70s. The 1977 setting is very authentic, and the ending is completely bonkers and well worth sitting, even if you're not enjoying the film, to sit through to that ending. I think you'll get a kick out of it. And I've completely forgotten that Tilda Swinton in the film plays 3 roles, including one of the male leads, which I didn't realise until after the film. When I was looking it up, I was going, oh yeah, I'd read that she played that guy in the film. So I was fooled. But I thought it was very enjoyable, and I was it's not a popcorn movie, but was more mainstream than I thought it was going to be. So yeah, thumbs up for that Suspiria remake.
Have we discussed that much here? I can't remember if
so, has anyone else seen it?
I've seen it, yes. But what about you, Nathan? Joseph, you caught up with it yet?
No, the running time and the fact that it was touted as this sort of Black Swan-esque art house movie has put me off it now. Now, the way you describe it, I kind of want to see it.
That put me off as well, but it's like parts of it are kind of Black Swan-y, I suppose. But there are other parts that are just pure, full-on popcorn horror movie, which really surprised me. What did you think of it, Justin?
I had mixed feelings about it, because I actually quite like the director's other movies, or some of the ones I've seen, like The Swimming Pool and Call Me By Your Name, which I did think he was an odd choice to remake this. And I think it's talked about this before about the approaches to remakes, and to paraphrase Nick Cave, he said the best way to do a cover version is to destroy the song from the inside out. And so I haven't got a problem with doing that with remakes of films. I think if you do a slavish remake of a film, it just pales into comparison. So the problem I had for me with it was that it didn't feel, it wasn't scary at all. It seemed to be any attempt to actually infuse it with any dread. It was more comical.
I got completely the opposite reaction. I thought it was infused with kind of dread.
I didn't get. Well, personally, I didn't. I don't know. Maybe it's just horses. Different horses for courses. It just didn't do that for me. And I thought for me it was a bit like remaking a classic comedy, but purposely leaving out all the jokes. But having said that, there's lots of it I did like. I did like, the gore. I think it was pretty gory, and the look of it was great, and the kind of the sort of subtle humour I kind of guessed to it. I think one of the major problems, and I won't say what it is, but there's a plot twist with one of the characters, which I think I've seen a lot of people mention that it could possibly makes the film is you don't have a central character to root for as the film progresses, perhaps. But overall, I just think that it didn't need to be 2 hours 20 minutes. It really does not. It's self-indulgent.
Well,
yeah, I mean, it's going to be honest. The other thing I've said is, after watching the original Suspiria, the last thing I thought the original needed was an extra half an hour of interpretive dance. Because
there is a lot of interpretive dance. Like the interpretive dance is laughable in my opinion.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is, I like the idea, the idea behind it, that without, it's not really a spoiler, but really the witch's magic is kind of performed, or their whole rituals are performed really through dance. And so when they get the girls to do the dancing is actually creating this magic and this kind of evil. But having said that, if you've got a film that's 2 hours 20 minutes, you don't need to see half an hour interpreted dance through it. It doesn't really, you could have made the same point in 5 minutes or 10 minutes. And so I just kind of felt it's a little bit like the director's a little bit the enfant terrible of Italian cinema, and Amazon were just saying you do whatever you want, and I think it could have done with a better editor, basically. Having said that, there's a lot to enjoy in it, and in some ways I'm glad it was very different from the original. But funnily enough, I thought the ending was more on par with something like Mother of Tears than it was the original Suspiria. That kind of getting that schlock horror thing, really.
It did. It went completely mental at the end, which I liked.
I liked it. It was unexpected, but for me, it's a misfire. But there's lots to enjoy in it. I just don't think. I'd like to watch it again. If I can set aside another month or so for it. But yes.
That long.
So, anything else, Erik?
No, that's the only horror I've watched this week. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you. Well, talking of Netflix, I caught up with their new horror movie, and it is kind of, I guess it's a horror movie. It's Velvet Buzzsaw, I think it's called.
Right.
Yeah, which is the one with it's kind of star-studded.
It's the Nightcrawler.
Is it him?
Jake Gyllenhaal, and Rene Russo.
Yeah, and Toni Collette's in it, and
they were both in Nightcrawler, and I think it's by the same director as well.
Okay, that makes sense. It's Toni Collette, and who was the other? There's there's quite a few recognisable people. There's the main female lead from Stranger Things. I mean, there's all sorts of different people in there you would recognise. But what's kind of I liked it quite a lot, actually, because I wasn't quite sure what to make of it. If I can, it's almost like a art world, as in like selling of fine art and the pretentiousness of that crossed with Final Destination. It's kind of a supernatural kind of horror movie with like a big star cast, which is quite funny but also quite grotesque. It's kind of, without giving too much away, the basic premise is that you're introduced to these kind of very pretentious, art world people who are kind of all buying, selling in Los Angeles, and it's all that kind of beautiful people and very shallow and empty, and everyone's very, very kind of pretentious. And one of them, his neighbours dies, and it's an old man. He's got this whole house or flat full of paintings he's done, and he instructs them all to be burnt when he dies. But she recognises that he's this great lost talent, so she takes them and they start selling them, and anyone who profits off them starts dying horribly. In kind of gruesome, ironic kind of ways. So it's interesting. It's like a cross between some kind of art world pastiche, sort of like a Spinal Tap of the art world crossed with a 90s horror thriller. It's it's an interesting mix. It's kind of sorry, I was just going to mention there's a topic on the discussion forum right now, and everyone there is saying
it's okay. It's just not what I expected, but I absolutely loved Nightcrawler, so I'm actually kind of looking forward to it. And the way, like Erik describing Suspiria, the way you describe it, it sounds like something that I would really like. So
I think it'd be interesting to see. It's not, it's a strange. It's almost like a Frankenstein's monster of a movie. It's got these kind of odd genres kind of shoehorned and stitched together. So I don't think it would necessarily work for everyone, but I enjoyed it. I thought it was it's enjoyable. It just really reminded me of a 90s horror thriller, but with very big star cast and gore and this kind of weird pastiche of the art world. It's interesting. Watch it and see what you think.
Yeah, this shows how much the loop I am, because I was under the impression that this was a straight-up comedy in the style of the Christopher Guest type movies where he was taking a poke at the art world. I didn't realize there was any kind of horror content at all, but now I am intrigued because it keeps coming up as the sort of the flagship. When I log into Netflix, that's the sort of thing that pops up on the top bar is Velvet Buzzsaw. So I'm going to check it out now.
Cool.
Yeah, I've definitely got that in my queue. Plus, I love Renee Russo.
Well, she's holding up pretty well considering she's in her mid-60s now.
I love Colette.
Yeah,
and Toni Collette's kind of they're all. It's incredibly cynical, but I enjoyed it. It's quite sort of dark, also quite funny as well, and also quite gory. And so it's interesting. It's good to see Netflix doing films like that. Which may possibly was struggled to get someone putting it behind for a theatrical release, perhaps. So, but the other film I caught up with was a film I've never seen, but I've always wanted to see it, and I've always wanted to see the remake. Is William Castle's I Know What You Did? No, I Saw What You Did, which from the mid to early 60s was it? It's, because I really like the William Castle movies. This one's slightly kind of less gimmicky, I kind of guess, and it's set around two teenage girls who are babysitting their little sister while one of their parents goes out for a dinner party out of state, and they start randomly phoning people in the phone book and sort of saying things, asking for women's husbands and things like that, just as kind of pranks, and then they.
Sorry, Justin. Is this the one with Shawnee Smith?
No, this is the original. Is Shawnee Smith in the remake, which I've not seen, but this is the original with the only people recognisable in it today anyway would be Joan Crawford, who plays the.
I thought you said you saw the remake. I got it.
No, I've wanted to see the remake, and I hadn't seen the original, so I just thought I had to see the original first. But it's kind of classic William Castle, but it's not quite as gimmicky. It doesn't have things like a fright break or anything like that. But these two teenage girls and their little sister kind of they phone somebody who's just murdered his partner, and they're phoning people randomly and saying, "I saw what you did. I know who you are," and then basically he managed to track them down, and there's a bit of a cat and mouse thing going on with that. And there's sort of Joan Crawford as this kind of bitchy, blousy neighbour who gets throwing herself at the murderer. So all in all, good fun and very, very dated, but in a very enjoyable kind of way. I can imagine. Nathan, is that one you've seen? Have you seen the remake?
I've seen the remake, and I've seen the original, but I mainly remember the remake because I saw it when I was a kid, and I love it, and I've seen it multiple times since. But I mean, I do remember the original as well, and I really like William Castle movies in general. I think he makes a lot of fun movies, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I thought it was kind of good fun. Not as quite as demented as Homicidal or House on Haunted Hill or any of the some of the other ones he did, or Straight Jacket with Joan Crawford, which is wonderful. But it's still kind of a lot of fun. Erik, have you seen it?
I haven't seen either version, no, but I'm aware of when you mentioned the synopsis, like, oh, that's that movie, but I've never got up with either of them. So,
did any of you ever do that as kids? Kind of when your parents were out, sort of phone people in different countries and different places and pretend to be people.
No,
did you not? I did that. Yeah, I remember one
I
time.
mean, I would make.
My parents would have gone through the roof.
Yeah, I used to make prank calls, but I'd never call. This is not really a thing anymore. But long distance, otherwise I'd be killed for running up the phone bill.
I know. Yeah. Well, I did do it back in. I don't know, when I was a kid, and we did phone America a few times just to hear people's accents. I can't remember, but we were sort of yeah. Luckily, we didn't phone any murderers. Although it would have been a very long way to come. My
flatmate once got a phone call at work, and she picked it up, and the person on the other end said, "Hello, baby, I'm going to kill you." And then they hung up.
Oh, God.
Yep.
Erik, why would you do that?
Well, it wasn't me.
I had.
You're the only one who laughs like that.
But the more recent thing, isn't it? I actually had the other week, well, last month, the first time I actually had a dick pic suddenly popped up on my phone from somebody using Bluetooth. Do you know this kind of craze?
Somebody nearby.
Yeah, just sort of popped up. I mean, I saw a news article and they started saying it's a real problem especially with kids and stuff, because people are, just sending these kind of random photos, and usually sort of sexually explicit, or quite often sexually explicit ones. And if you have your Bluetooth turned on to receive from anyone, then you can these things just pop up. But as it were.
And did you reply back with like a little?
No, it literally popped up.
Down.
It just popped up for like 2 seconds. There was a time I went to show Stuart and said, "Look," it had gone. It was kind of literally. It was just almost like I don't know the young person's but Snapchat or whatever things that disappear, if that's still the case. But it kind of just popped up and it was there for 2 seconds and then vanished.
Are you sure you didn't imagine it?
No, I didn't imagine it. But are we trying to say that I'm daydreaming about penises while I'm in shopping centres, Erik?
Yeah.
Well, no. In this case, that it was a real thing. I felt a bit like Dottie Hinkle in Serial Mom. So, anyway, that is our recently seen. So, Erik, are you ready to take us to Elm Street?
I am ready to take you all to Elm Street. Y'all's turn to go to Elm Street. Freddy Krueger returns to deliver a whole new breed of terror in his most fiendishly perverse fright fest yet. In A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master, Freddy was vanquished by Alice, who is now having nightmares again. But this time something is different. Freddy is now able to slaughter her friends while she is awake. In order to stop him, Alice must figure out how he is doing this and what his weakness is before she becomes his next victim. So, A Nightmare on Elm Street 5 is one that never reached cinemas in my hometown of Kilkenny when I was growing up. So I caught this one on video, and it was probably late 1990 by the time it arrived on VHS. So it was a good 18 months after it had been released. I remember being slightly disappointed, but thinking that overall the film was quite okay overall. Though, in more recent years, I'm really drawn to what I would call flawed sequels. And this is the reason why I quite like Halloween 5 so much as well. It has the same sort of backstory as Elm Street 5, in that both of them were rushed into production. A script was thrown together that feels like, and then the final shooting script feels very much like a first draft, as it was with Halloween 5, and that's kind of what I like about it. I like this sort of kitchen sink approach that Nightmare on Elm Street 5 has. 4 had some really spectacular special effects sequences, but overall I felt it was a bit flat, and it felt like there was nothing sort of connecting the special effects together at all, and the plot sort of felt very thin in Nightmare 4. In Nightmare 5, it just everything looks incredibly rushed about the film, which is strange considering what the huge box office success of 4. You think they put a bit more care and attention into 5, but I just suppose they wanted to get one out that summer, and so I think their approach was, anything will do, and that's kind of why Nightmare 5 is so intriguing for me. I mean, the script makes little sense. It has one central idea, which is that a pregnant Alice has her fetus is dreaming, and thus she, Freddy is killing people while she's awake, which is an interesting, idea, and I suppose moves the whole Freddy mythology forward slightly. And the pregnancy angle, again, is their attempt for the series to grow up a little and sort of tackle more serious issues, but it kind of skates over those issues in a sort of superficial way. Alice is asked by Mark at one stage if she ever thought of terminating the pregnancy to sort of end, Freddy's reign, and but that issue is discarded fairly quickly. The same when Dan's parents, do the speech where they want to sort of take the baby off Alice's hands again. That idea is dropped fairly quickly as well. But it's very much keeping with the template set by parts 3 and 4, with the sort of ironic deaths where whatever the teenagers' interests are, that's how they're going to die, whether it's by comic books, by food, or by motorbike. Although I don't recall Dan ever expressing an interest in motorbikes, but he dies by one anyway in this, in probably what is, for me, the most spectacular special effects sequence in the film. There's a major drop in quality, though, in a lot of the effects work in 5, particularly Freddy's makeup. Corners are obviously being cut. Freddy's makeup was simplified slightly to make the application process quicker for Robert Englund, but and also they wanted to give him a more aged look, but I think he begins to look a bit more pantomime-y in this one, and in part 6 as well. I just don't like the way the makeup looks. The sinister edge of Freddy that he kind of still had in 3 and 4 is now completely gone for me. There's some charming but quite ropey stop motion effects in here as well, and my favorite laugh out loud moment in the film is where Greta, with her chipmunk cheeks, appears in Alice's fridge in what has to be one of the strangest and silliest scenes in any of the Nightmare on Elm Street series. Always gets a chuckle from me. Although, having said that, there is a harder edge to some of the death sequences in this, particularly that motorbike sequence where the motorbike sort of begins to meld with Dan and he begins to sort of fuse with it. I thought that was quite gruesome. And Greta's death is quite nasty as well, considering that, for me, she's probably the most likable character in the film, and she gets the most sort of horrific death. I thought the Freddy rebirth scene was quite cool as well, where the sort of hand puppet Freddy, he looks kind of like he's an extra from The Uninvited, the Graydon Clark movie. But I like when he sort of crawls into the jumper and begins to grow outwards, and that whole sequence at the start I thought was quite well done. Jacob as the creepy kid, creepy kids in these movies, they're 10 a penny in more recent times. If you think of, PG-13 movies like The Ring remake and all that, there's always creepy kids who are drawing creepy things on paper and talking to imaginary friends. The kid in this is a good actor. He's actually very good. But, I just don't like when they start resorting to having a creepy kid, talking cryptically, in a film. It probably wasn't a cliche in 1989, but it certainly is now. The comic book guy, I know we'll have lots to say about him. Mark is the character's name. I think he's kind of fun. I love his clothes. He wears these sort of shirts with very, very busy patterns, very 1989, and he wears garish waistcoats over them. I'm not sure he's that bad an actor. I'm sure we're going to talk about his acting skills soon. Some of his line delivery is poor, but I think that goes for a lot of the cast as well. I think the dialogue is at fault mainly. It's the script that, the words they're given to say, doesn't do them any favors whatsoever. Plus the fact that it's a rushed production, so there probably wasn't a huge amount of time to do, multiple takes on some of these lines. I suppose one of the jump the shark moments in the series is when we see Freddy on a skateboard. Freddy should never take on sort of trendy, things like skateboarding, or when he's in part 6 playing video games. It just, it dates a film. It really does. And then Super Freddy as well is hilariously awful. But again, I'd rather something be hilariously awful than just be drab and dull. So these are all the reasons why I think The Dream Child is a really sort of fun and entertaining movie. I think it's very brisk and breezy, and it has, the director says he wanted to give it a darker edge. I'm not sure it has that much of a darker edge than the previous entries. I think because of the silliness of the plot, some poor acting, some ropey special effects, make it kind of a very, very trashy movie to me. So it's a fairly big thumbs up for me for part 5. I think it's vastly superior to part 4, which I still kind of like, but I think it's probably because I've seen 1 too many times. I very rarely return to that. 2 I would still revisit. 3 I've seen too many times. I never go back to. 4, it fails to hold my attention all the way through. But 5, I can watch from start to finish quite happily and keep doing so because it doesn't wear out its welcome. So The Dream Child is one, I believe, that one of us had never seen before, and that one of us is you, Justin Kurzweil. Is this true? Have you never seen The Dream Child?
Well, if I have seen it, I've forgotten it. I don't think I had, actually. It's one of those films that Joseph reminded me that I hadn't seen part 4 either. So when we covered that, and I was watching this and thinking, I remember not seeing part 4 before, but I thought, had I seen part 5? Because I'd gone to cinema to see Freddy's Dead, and what a rich and rewarding experience that was back when that came out.
It's quite good.
Yeah, I know. But I remember at the time thinking, my God, I think possibly because I'd skipped from part 3 to Freddy's Dead, the change in quality was so stark, and also the 3D was so bloody awful. But that's a little treat we have yet to come to on that film. I presume that'll be coming up next time we go back to Elm Street. But
yes.
So this one, it was a first time watch, although of course I think the reason why I thought I'd seen the parts 4 and parts 5 is because back in the day, in the late 80s, I was kind of devouring the likes of Fangoria and Gore Zone and Slaughterhouse and all of those horror film magazines. So I'd read all about the special effects and the Freddy motorbike and all those kind of things. So that's kind of, I think, why I kind of guess. But of course, the other reason was I've said it before and I'll say it again, I'm not the biggest, if we're looking at the big franchises, the Elm Street franchise comes at the bottom for me out of the Friday the 13th and Halloween franchises, as far as kind of a personal taste. I've waxed lyrical about seeing the first Nightmare on Elm Street film at the cinema, the first horror film I'd ever seen at the cinema when I was 16. So they have a special place in my heart, and I love part 2. But from part 3, I like, and then I see them as a case of lesser returns. Having said that, there was quite a lot to like in this movie, and I was watching and thinking, actually, I am surprised I've never seen this before. I can see all the faults that you mentioned, Erik. I do think it's the comic book guy I think his performance is pretty bad, really, compared to the main heroine. Her character. I think her acting is pretty good considering she's got given the same level of script as some of the other characters. Having said that, I mean, I was reminded by Greta's mum with the toy shock of red hair. She reminded me of Aunt Martha from Sleepaway Camp, her line delivery. So I was kind of wondering if they were going for that kind of arch, kind of slightly camp sort of note to the film. But there was lots of, a lot of it I thought was very inventive visually. And again, I think the comic book guy thing, it felt like a bit like an Aha video, like, Take On Me. With the comic book thing going on in that, it seemed like a bit of a riff on that. But having said that, I really liked some of the set pieces, like the at the end with the Escher drawings, the famous optical illusion drawings with running up and down stairs and people being upside down and impossible stairways, things like that. I thought it was very kind of dream logic feel to that, which I thought was good. I like the things like the comic book guy running through the warehouse collapsing and he's all in colour, everything else in black and white. Visual touches like that I thought were really well done, considering everything else is so rushed. And I'm sure we'll talk about background about how it was so rushed. But overall, it's kind of an interesting failure. But I enjoyed it more than I thought I was going to do, to be honest. But I felt it was a bit. I think it's a bit like with the Friday the 13th films to some degree and the Halloween films when they're pumping them out year on year. I think it's almost that, although we talked about the kind of lethal predictability of the slasher movie is something that's why we enjoy them to a lot of degrees, because they are the same thing over and over and over again, and there's a certain pleasure to be taken from that. I felt like it was a law of diminishing returns to some degree. Having said that, I liked the slightly darker edge to the film. It felt a kind of gothic feel to it, but also with a very cheesy 80s edge. I mean, it was a kind of a weird kind of mishmash of stuff, but I think it was a bit convoluted, which of course the Nightmare on Elm Street films are. Very 80s, like that the scene where the door opens, there's the nuns with the shard of light coming down and the pigeons all around her. It's straight out of a Bonnie Tyler video.
Very much.
But overall, I was surprised actually how much I enjoyed it. But it did feel, dare I say, it's a bit like money for old rope. And I think your mileage may vary with it, because if you're a big fan of the Elm Street franchise, and I would say I'm a fan, but I'm not as big a fan as I would be of, say, the Halloween or the Friday the 13th franchise, and overall the kind of everything associated with it, then your mileage may vary with this, but it's interesting to catch up with these films that I've kind of had a mental, a blind spot for since they came out. So but overall I enjoyed it. I thought it was. I was dreading it, and not dreading it, but I was thinking, this is going to be really shit, because I know. This probably got one of the worst receptions for the Elm Street films, and it kind of almost finished off the franchise, isn't it? Because it's very much quick, the ascendancy of the Elm Street films going from, I think it was part 4, was part 4 the highest grossing, wasn't it, of all of them? Yeah, and so it was kind of going up and up and up and up, and then suddenly, boom, it kind of fell off this precipice, which it still made a lot of money, don't get me wrong, but it was a very quick tail off, in terms of perhaps the quality and also box office. Like Freddie it felt like Freddie had jumped the shark, or his sell-by date had expired slightly by 1989, perhaps.
Yeah, part 5 did tank with critics and at the box office to a degree. I mean, it was the lowest, from going from the highest grossing to the lowest grossing in one movie is quite a sharp fall. Joseph, you were watching it this week for the first time in a long time too, weren't you?
Yeah, well, I'd seen it a few times, back in the day. I always thought it was just, trash, just rubbish. And, like you said, the comic book guy, he's just the worst. But I'll get back to him later. I honestly don't think he's the worst anymore, but I'll explain that as I go along. You may be shocked to hear this. This is probably the biggest 180 I've ever done on a movie in my life. I absolutely, without question, loved The Dream Child, watching it this week. I've actually seen it twice this week. I think going from this sort of bubblegum kind of music video approach in part 4 with Rennie Harlan, having all this garish kind of pop music, direction, to this kind of dour and downbeaten Skid Row kind of budgeted approach. I don't know. It did something. It's such a stark jump from kind of bubble gum to rotten tapioca pudding in one movie. And this movie feels like Tim Burton was hired to direct a Freddy movie, but he was only given like 3 days to make it, and his compensation was like $50, a pack of Pall Malls, and a case of Schlitz. And it's just so down. It's just so down and dirty, and it's kind of juxtaposed against the more cheesy scenes with Freddy, and his one-liners and the garish kind of murder scenes that we're used to in these Nightmare on Elm Street films. But for some reason, all this kind of mishmash and kind of this salmagundi of kind of ideas just kind of works together for some reason. I can't explain why, but the movie just kind of hit on all gears for me. I kind of liken it as the I'd say it's the Friday the 13th Part 5, A New Beginning of the Elm Street series, or it's the I Still Know What You Did Last Summer of the Elm Street series. It's just so outlandish. It's so all over the place. It's it's definitely kitchen sink and more, and the microwave too type of movie. But I had so much fun with it. I dare say this may be my favorite of the Elm Street series. I mean, don't get me wrong. Part 1, Part 3, and to another extent, Part 2 are better made movies, and even Part 4 is a better made movie. But for me, Part 5 just has this kind of this bad movie mystique about it that I loved. I liked all the characters. I thought the movie starts out really dark. I mean, Alice is having this dream at the beginning where she's in this asylum with all these people, and they have all these like very, very startling, kind of Tim Burton-esque close-up shots of Robert Englund out of his makeup. Him like right on the lens of the camera, and everyone else kind of like soft focus in the background. Very stark imagery of him following her around in this asylum in her dream. And then when she wakes up from the dream, he's there to attack her for like a split second. It's really shocking. And what's more, kind of startling about the scene is like he's not in his, Freddy getup. It's just Robert Englund playing that, pre-burned Freddy. And for some reason, I don't know why, but for some reason that scene really jarred me. I just thought it was kind of haunting and startling. I'm like, this is not like the Elm Street I'm used to. I mean, are they going back to a darker Freddy? And they kind of do until at least with the story. The story is very dark, obviously, with the teen pregnancy issue and things like that. But I'm thinking, are they trying to make this a dark kind of origin story? I don't know, but as soon as Freddy actually shows up in his getup, it gets a little more silly. But I don't know. Like I said, just all these ideas and random happenstance and random kind of ideas meshed together would normally not work in another movie. But for some reason, I thought it floored me in every aspect. So a thumbs super sky high for me. This is probably my favorite Elm Street film now. Before I say anything, before I sign off, I just want to mention Joe Seeley, who plays the comic book guy, Mark. My God, watching this over the years, I'm like, this guy is just the worst. But watching it now with a more kind of critical approach to it, just studying, lines and direction and all that thing, I don't think he's as bad as I remember. I mean, he's obviously awful. But I think a lot of the problem is due to, well, obviously he's not giving any favors with a very bad, dialogue. But a lot of his lines are ADR, and it's like the ADR in one take. Like it seems like they recorded, mostly him, and maybe his sound wasn't that great, or maybe he just didn't enunciate loudly, so they had to do ADR. And it just seems like, with his physical acting and his mouth movements, it just feels kind of off, and it's really badly done ADR. So I'm not going to be as harsh on him anymore. And his death scene is actually my favorite in this series, probably. I just think that like Justin said, that aha take on me kind of approach there with the black and white. It's called dreamlike, and comic book panel come to life, but he's in color, and he's this Avenger and this kind of orange and kind of rust colors going up against this grayed out Super Freddy, who's obviously not Robert Englund. It looks like one of those burly kind of dumbbell lifters from the 1920s, except he just doesn't have the wax tip mustache. But anyway, the scene is very striking. Just very well played, even though Joe Seeley's acting's not up to the level of say Robert Englund here, but the scene is just very well done. I'm not a comic book fan, but I think the scene is just phenomenal. The art direction is just superb, and I love Mark's like little. I don't know if his dad owns this like warehouse, and he's just got this giant space to do all his comic book sketches there. But I love his little warehouse setup that he lives in. It's so cluttered. You expect to see him like in 20 years, if you'd have survived Freddy's reign, you'd expect to see him like on an episode of A&E's Hoarders or something. Like they're like, dude, you need to clean out your house. It's getting pretty bad. But I got a kick out of that. But overall, this movie was kind of a revelation. I was surprised at just how how it resounded with me. So thumbs, as far up as I can go. Nightmare on Elm Street Part 5, The Dream Child. It's a movie I hated so much, through the years, but I'm so glad we picked it. I'm so glad I went back and gave it another chance because, it's bonkers. It's bizarre. It's a bad movie, but it's a wonderful bad movie. So yeah, thumbs way up.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That was a review. Nathan, can you be you're our Prince of Enthusiasm. I was going to say Queen of Enthusiasm, but that'd be wrong. Or would it be?
Well, maybe not.
Well, what do you think?
Oh, well, I mean, it's fantastic. I mean, it's just amazing. I will say though that now I looked it up, okay, and they said that the medical sites say that babies in the womb don't usually begin to experience like REM sleep until like week 23. So that means Alice would have had to have been nearly 6 months pregnant before the baby would actually be dreaming, and I don't think she is. So I think the movie kind of.
Yeah, that takes me out of the movie completely now. It's ruined.
I think it's a little unrealistic in that sense. And can I just say that Greta's mom and all her dinner guests are horrible people. They just basically watch Greta choke to death. Like nobody runs over there and tries anything. They just stare at her while she's choking, and then she just drops dead. I'm like, they could have tried something. So yeah, I was not pleased with. Huh?
They're too posh for the Heimlich maneuver.
Yeah, this is true. They needed some other people there to do that.
This is a case of Greta. Greta has family, but Nathan doesn't care.
Well, the family was not nice to Greta, at least from what we saw. And why does her cheeks swell up like she's had an allergic reaction to eating a doll?
I think she's supposed to be like food is stuffed in her cheeks so much, like a chipmunk or something like that.
Oh, that's a lot of food then. It didn't look like Freddy fed her that much. Well,
did you notice that it's I wonder if it got. Sorry, I was going to say, I wonder if it got cut slightly because it cuts from her just being force fed slightly to being. It was.
Nathan,
that scene and the motorbike scene are heavily cut in the theatrical version. So yeah, there was much more of Greta had been disemboweled and having it shoved in her mouth. Yeah.
Nathan, not to keep interrupting you, but one thing, you mentioning that scene with Greta and the food in her cheeks, and Erik mentioning the motorbike scene. A lot of the effects in this movie, or a lot of the set pieces in particular, really, really strongly reminded me of something like Society by Brian Usna. It has that feel, that tone to it, that avant-garde, but yet kind of immature, kind of slight bent to it. It's just really bizarre, and I really appreciated that.
Yeah, I mean, I love Society, so I mean, I could kind of see that too. And the idea that in the uncut version, Freddy's actually feeding, I guess, Greta like her own innards is kind of disturbing. It's a shame that got cut out because in the movie it looks like he's just feeding her some like realistic doll that's got innards inside of it, I guess. Is innards the right word?
It is.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, and I thought that was kind of crazy. I will say I was very surprised that her friend, played by Kelly Jo Minter, survived. I'm like, this movie, Nightmare on Elm Street has a relatively very low body count in general because, I mean, the death set pieces are pretty spectacular. I still don't understand why Greta's like flying out of a refrigerator. And, Freddy, I do love Freddy, but Freddy, you're being just a little bit petty because when he grabs Greta and like by the hair and pulls the refrigerator closed, he gonna leave a note on the fridge that says, "Die, bitch," to Alice. And I'm like, excuse me, Freddy, have you turned into some bully high school girl?
He says bitch a lot in this film.
He does. He calls all the women that. And I'm like, Freddy, that is not cool. Okay. I mean, killing them, that's one thing. But the insults,
Nathan, was there only like 3 deaths in this movie? Because I'm only remembering Dan, Mark, and Greta.
The comic book guy, Greta, and really, that's the only ones I remember. So
yeah. It is
a very low body count. But I think the reason I don't notice it as much is because, like I said, the death pieces are so memorable and over the top and insane that I'm like, okay, well, these are pretty fun. I'm actually a big fan of the Nightmare on Elm Street series. I actually think I would place it maybe a little bit above the Halloween series. Because even though Halloween 1, I think, is better than all the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, and I don't know, part 2 maybe as well, because I just love the straightforward slasher. But later when we get into especially Halloween 4 and 6 and all that, I don't know. I'm just kind of But Nightmare on Elm Street, even the worst ones still make me kind of laugh. So I give it the edge just for that reason alone. I think Alice is a good heroine to go up against Freddy. I mean, she did in part 4 and now in part 5. Like you guys say, the dialogue, I guess, probably isn't the best. Although I also remember part 4 with Kristen's, what was it? It's his banquet and I'm the main course or something, which I thought was hilarious. And then in this one, it's this time it's for keeps, Kruger or something like that.
Yep.
And I'm like, was last time not for keeps, Alice? Why is it this time?
I can't remember. I haven't seen Freddy's Dead since it came out the theater, but did they explain why Alice isn't in that movie?
No, she's just not brought up. She's ignored in that movie because I watched it not too long ago. I love that one too, but we'll get to that when we cover it. But yeah, I think this movie is majorly entertaining. I love so much about it. All the way from the odd death scenes. I mean, I don't know. And I think that Mark's death is actually pretty brutal because, of course, in the dream world, he's just getting sliced up like a piece of paper. But then when you kind of cut to reality, you mainly just see his bloody hand. And I'm like, Freddy ripped him to shreds. I think it would have been wild to see his actual body because he was slicing him up like crazy. I always like when Freddy actually uses his glove to do the killing because a lot of times he doesn't use his glove. And I'm like, I like seeing him use his glove.
In a lot of the films in the series, it's like the characters are typically hoist by their own petard, but in here he actually uses his glove on the Mark character, so he's inflicting a lot of pain. It's just kind of
I think it would get boring for Freddy, though.
He's got this focal point on his hand of these giant razors, and not to utilize it as much as he should. I appreciate that they finally did something with it in this scene.
I always just felt that Freddy might just get a little bored with it. And since he can control whatever he wants when they're in the dream world, then I think that, he's like, well, I could kill them all with the glove. But, let's be honest. This is going to get boring after a while. So I think I'm going to switch it up a little bit and turn people into big cockroaches and stuff like that just for fun. I think it's mainly Freddy just having fun. He gets bored. He needs to have something fun to do. So, at least Freddy kind of makes your death a fun experience for himself. It's not just, I'm going to hack your head off immediately. It's no, I'm going to play around with you for a little while first because we all have to go to sleep. We can't stay awake forever. Speaking of which, what is the longest you guys have ever stayed awake?
About 4 hours.
Oh, okay. That's not very long. Justin?
Probably, I don't know, 48 hours.
You stayed up 2 days? Wow.
Yeah.
About 24 hours probably is be mine, I'd say.
I got you all beat. I stayed up 3.5 days once.
Okay, yeah, that's definitely got me beat because I stayed up 48 hours, I'd say, but that's I was just had crazy energy, I guess.
It's kind of like that episode of Kenny versus Spinny by the end there, where they have to stay awake.
Right.
Yeah, but I was going to mention, Nathan, Freddy. It seems like like you said, before he actually kills these kids, he always has these weird kind of outlandish scenarios to kind of startle them into the dream world to where he can kill them. Like in this one, there's a scene where the shower just starts vibrating, and then he does that throughout a lot of the movies. Like they have these big build-up scenes before, and Joey in part 3 getting pulled down into this hellscape through his bed before he, actually killing people. It's just like you said, he does like to toy, whereas like Michael Myers and Jason and to a lesser extent Leatherface, they just kind of chop up their victims. So Freddy has the personality. Now I prefer the silent type, but I think as long as if you get a one-liner, I think Freddy's the gold standard.
Was that in the
shower sequence?
Yeah, the shower sequence.
When that gunk comes out of the plug hole, it looks like vomit or maybe possibly poo.
Gross.
That made me feel nauseous.
Was that really Lisa Wilcox in the? Was that her or was that a stand-in? Do you think?
I would imagine it's a stand-in. I'd say.
Yeah, because in part 1, Heather Langenkamp had a stand-in because there's a scene in part 1 where she's in a bathtub. I don't know if you guys remember, but his glove comes up
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like coming at her face.
Yes.
And like Freddy pulls her down, and when he does, like you kind of see like boobies. And in the commentary, Heather Langenkamp is like, "That's not me." So it was like a body double. So I bet Alice used one too.
It must have been weird when they went to premieres and stuff, wasn't it? If they actually had them for the Elm Street films, to see if they knew they were going to have that kind of that level of nudity and people giving them side eye.
Yeah, like
look at that trap.
Decided to do that kind of movie, did you?
Yes.
I mean, the thing that I thought
the goods.
was interesting in some ways was this film more than any of the others, perhaps, although I can guess possibly with part 3 and 4, it didn't really feel like it was in the real world. Even the non-dream stuff felt like it wasn't a real.
Do you think like maybe the whole movie was a dream?
Well, possibly. It was very broad, wasn't it? The whole thing. It was kind of. There wasn't even the graduation sequence. It was almost like. I kind of felt like almost like a movie like Hairspray, the original Hairspray, where everything, like those kind of musicals where everything's it's hyper real but not really real. So it didn't feel like you had that differentiation between the dream state and the real state, because everything seemed like hyper real, kind of ultra vivid type, over the top. Even say like with the Greta and her mother, her mother was so over the top. And the idea that Greta had this chintzy bedroom with these kind of ugly dolls and things like that. It just felt it wasn't sort of real, which I thought it's not a criticism, because I think it's actually quite interesting doing that. And I thought actually the other thing that struck me, and I think it's something they didn't go far enough with, which I think would have been interesting, and it was actually reminded me when Joseph mentioned about the Super Freddy. He's like a 1920 style sort of muscle man type of thing without the moustache. But there were some bits in it where Freddy was moving like a 1920s villain, like a black and white villain. It was almost like a bit like Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, that kind of thing. They seem to be going for lots of different things, but possibly not kind of embracing anything fully.
I think that's why the film works for me. It's just all these ideas are just like they don't boil anything down to a cohesive whole. It's just they want to throw in every. I knew Erik was going to laugh at that.
That wasn't me. That was
Oh, Justin was laughing. Oh, okay. Sorry, Erik. No, they don't. They want to throw in everything, and they don't want to do one thing. They just want to do like everything they can think of. And any other movie, I'd be like, okay, just pick something. But here, I don't know. It just works.
Yeah.
Were you guys in suspense at all during the film?
Probably not.
No.
But
No.
it's not a film that really relies on suspense, is it? One of the things I do like, well, it's kind of a criticism, but also something I quite like about the Elm Street films is that the ways people come up to defeat Freddy and also to resurrect him at the start of films. But like in this one, the kid sort of spits out a giant knob or something that goes and then that makes all these people's heads come out of his back. And it's like, what?
Erik, do you spit out a lot of knobs?
No, I don't. But it's like it's almost at the stage where they're like, oh, let's sellotape this oven glove to a badminton racket and wave it around and shout wibble, 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 and maybe that will defeat Freddy. It's like they just kind of make up anything to.
In every movie, there's like a clear-cut way that's supposed to destroy Freddy, and you're right. They always think that they've like finally done it. They finally found the way to destroy him, but. No, I mean in the last movie, how was it in part 4 that what destroyed him? I know
she has to say the magic rhyme and put a mirror up in front of his face, and that kills him. It's like
I'm like in part 5. Why didn't Alice think? Okay, well, I mean, just find that damn rhyme and a mirror, and let's just go for this because I've already done it once.
Yeah.
But instead, it's something different. And something else? When she finds out that her baby is like the one causing the deaths of her friends inadvertently, and I don't want the baby I don't want her to, like try to hurt herself or anything. But I'm just saying, could she like run up and down the stairs to kind of like wake the baby up so it's not dreaming?
That's a good point. Maybe she should.
I would just be like, can you go do some cardio because he's going to come after me. I mean, he's already turned, one of your friends into a chipmunk and he's already drained the color out of your other one. So I'm like, I think he's going to kill me. So if you could just do something, and I don't know how Freddy would kill me. maybe something movie related, since I love movies so much. I can't think of anything else. I think Eric's might be Kit Kat related.
Yours would be Toke related, surely.
Yeah,
oh
turn
yeah,
into a giant bomb.
Mine would be a stoner type death. Eric's would be Kit Kats.
Or Toya, yeah.
Or Toya, yes. Justin's could be Susie. Freddie would show up disguised as Susie, and Justin would run up to get autographs, and Freddie would just suddenly start, attacking. What would yours be, Joseph?
I don't know. Lately I've been...
yours would be a stoner death, too.
Well, yeah, that. But lately I've been...
Chick.
Lately, I've been such a slave to technology. Maybe some technology related would be my end. I don't know, but a couple other points. I was going to mention. Nathan, you said, "Why didn't she hold up the mirror and say the rhyme to Freddie?" I think the implication I get out of these films is every time Freddie comes back, he's obviously a little more powerful, but I think he's overcome the obstacles that defeated him once before, so they can't be used against him again. It's always the feeling I got out of why they just didn't do the same thing over and over.
I think that's a good theory.
Another thing I wanted to mention is one character in this film that I was really, shocked at how much I liked, considering he was such a complete douchebag in the fourth film, was Alice's dad. They turned him into this really sympathetic character. He's kind of like... in the fourth film, he's like a withdrawn kind of alcoholic guy. He neglects his children, and here he's just so supportive of Alice, and he stands up to Dan's parents, and he tells her just don't make a habit out of getting pregnant, indicating that he's going to be there for the baby and all that stuff, and he's always there to comfort her, and I was really shocked at how well they turned his character around. I was surprised by that.
Maybe losing his son kind of shook him up a little bit,
Maybe, I think maybe he's kind of seeing, he's got another chance to be to have a son type character in his life with Alice's baby.
Yeah, because losing your son to an invisible kung fu fight is quite traumatic.
I'm sorry, but that to me, and it just stinks that it's one of the more lame deaths in Nightmare on Elm Street series is the kung fu fight with Invisible Freddy.
Yeah, obviously Robert Englund probably couldn't do all those kung fu moves needed, so.
He was heavy into kung fu, too.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I actually felt really bad for Alice in this movie. And you know what? I bet after this, Alice probably has the worst time finding friends because all her friends died in 4. Most of her friends died in 5. So, I mean, even if she was in part 6, if she came up to me and was like, oh, hey, I'm Alice, I'd be like, oh, hey, bye. Like, I don't know you because you're going to dream and drag me into it, and Freddy's going to slash me up with his finger knobs. So, no.
It's kind of like Paul Kersey from the Death Wish films. No woman in her right mind would want to marry this guy because every time he gets married, the woman either gets raped or killed or both. It's with Alice, it's her friends dying. One other thing I was going to mention before I forgot about it, and I think I just forgot about it. Never mind.
How dare you? I felt bad for Dan because, I mean, he survived in part 4. Why do you have to die in part 5?
I know why you feel bad for Dan.
Why? Because he's attractive?
Yes, because you think he's super dreamy.
He is.
Oh, you're so shallow, Nathan. You wouldn't see
I want to walk up to him and say, hey, you're one major league hunk.
It always reminds me.
Sorry, I remember what I was going to say. I was talking to Nathan earlier this week after I watched the film the first time. And I think the one thing we agreed that this film, obviously needed was the higher body count. And I thought maybe the scenes where Alice and Mark are kind of investigating Krueger, I think, and then elsewhere, the Kelly Jo Minter, the little candy striper nurse friend, she's just kind of off doing her own thing. I think they could have trimmed some of that stuff down a little bit and maybe thrown in another friend to die. Got to give it a little more oomph, maybe.
It is. Yeah. I mean, it's surprisingly low, the body count in this compared to 3 and 4. I always wonder what the thinking was behind that. I wonder was it cutting corners so they have less special effects to do, or?
That's what I think. I think it was just having to do less special effects.
Maybe I would like to think maybe they were trying to go for more more of an atmospheric approach rather than a body count approach. But I don't know. The Freddy films really lend themselves to the outlandish death scenes. So I think they could have used a couple more here.
Amanda Kruger, why doesn't she just give Alice the exact coordinates of where to find the body, rather than saying something cryptic like, "Look for me in the tower"?
And then I love that she just yells it out to her friend, the candy strapper. What's her name? Kelly Jo Minter's her real name.
Yeah.
What's her name in this movie?
Is it Denise? Is it Denise?
I
think.
She yells like, "Find Amanda!" And then Denise just drives here in the middle of the night, drives there, goes up there and takes apart the wall.
I'm not sure if that's her name. It's just the name that's popping into my head.
It was like, why? I mean, how did she even know like all of that? Like, I'm sorry, but if my friend was yelling at me to go somewhere, I'd be like, maybe I'll do it in the morning when it's, not as creepy there.
Well, I was also thinking that actress as well, we're talking about the shower scene, but she had a very unenviable task of, like when she's flying through the air in that her swimming costume, you can see right up her legs, and she's getting slow motion. You know the scene I mean? When she's in a swimming pool and she's flying through the air.
Yeah, because she's the swimmer.
But
can you see something?
Well, you can see it shoots right up between her legs, and she's going to slow motion with her legs waggling sort of furiously. And they're, it's not the most glamorous of shots for an actress to see on like a 40-foot screen or something in front of her.
Sorry. It's not Denise, Nathan. It's Yvonne.
Yvonne. Yeah. I don't know why I kept forgetting her name.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I love that actress. I thought she was great in Popcorn.
She's in Mask as well.
Yeah, she's really good in that, too. Isn't she a prostitute in Mask?
Yes, but she's a really nice one.
Yes, she's very, very friendly. I love Mask, by the way. It's a good movie.
It is. It's very sad, though. It makes me go boo-hoo at the end.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Oh, it's got what's her name is in it as well. Lana from Part 5 has a cameo in Mask.
Oh, yeah, and Cher's in it, too.
Yes.
But on Nightmare on Elm Street Part 5, I find the film to be fantastic. There must be something about Part 5s in major series, because Friday the 13th Part 5 is goofy fun, Halloween 5 is goofy fun, Nightmare on Elm Street 5 is goofy fun.
Okay, well, let's talk about the 1989 big slasher franchises. I think I did this in the when we did Part 4, but okay, rate favorite to worst of Halloween 5, Elm Street 5, and Friday the 13th 8, which all came out in 1989. For me, Elm Street 5 is my favorite, Halloween 5 second favorite, Friday the 13th 8 is my least favorite, although I do find bits to enjoy in it. So, Justin, what do you think?
It's a tough question, actually. I don't think any of them are amazing, if I'm honest. But there's stuff to enjoy in all of them. I love the premise of Friday the 13th Part 8. It's just unfortunately kind of shortchanged with the lack of Jason in New York. Halloween 5, I don't think it's... I still prefer Part 4. I would probably say Nightmare on Elm Street 5, then Halloween 5, then Friday the 13th Part 8.
Okay. Nathan?
I'm agreeing with you guys. It's Nightmare on Elm Street 5, Halloween 5 because of the wonderfully lovely Tina. And Friday the 13th Part 8 right afterwards, because I will say that I do love Friday the 13th Part 8. I think it's also incredibly goofy and stupid, and it's just really fun. And so I love it, but if I had to rank them, that's probably how I would rank them.
And Joseph? I think I can guess which way you're going, but
I would say A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 5, and then Halloween 5, and then...
So we all agree.
Then 10 pounds of shit in a 5-pound bag, and then Jason Takes Manhattan.
Oh. How do you fit 10 pounds in a 5-pound bag?
You just stuff it in there.
That's physics defying.
Oh.
Yeah.
Huh.
Well, should we do... Okay. Should we... I mean, there's probably not much point doing after the credits, is there? Because there's obviously Freddy's Dead. Although, am I right in thinking none of the characters from this film appear in that one?
Well,
they don't. Freddy's Dead is a totally new group of characters.
No, Freddy's in it.
Well, Freddy's in it,
of
course.
Yeah, but not like the others.
Yes.
But I will say that after the credits, Alice lives forever. And that's it.
Alice dies.
No,
just like
she
in
never
part 2.
dies. No Alice ever dies.
I wonder how Freddy actually finds these new groups of kids. It's like he gives up on Alice. He's like, all right, it's not worth it. She's beat me twice. I'm just going to go find somebody else to mess with.
Well, he goes messes with his kid.
Yeah.
Which I won't spoil, but Freddy goes after his child. I think he's like, okay, I messed around with somebody else's child. It didn't work out, so I'm going to go find my own.
Well, Alice is the only one to have beaten him twice. Because in Dream Master, all the survivors of Part 3 are killed. And at the start of this one, Dan is killed, who was the only survivor from 5.
And Nancy is killed in Part 3, so she doesn't really defeat him there.
Now, does that bother you? Because you know how you say how when they bring a character back for a sequel and they kill them, it typically bothers you? Did that bother you in Part 3? It didn't me because she dies at the end. She has like a sacrifice moment, so she had a full character arc. So
yeah, and I would agree with that because to me, like they brought her back, they gave her this huge character arc. She kind of, she kind of becomes like a hero throughout the film for the kids. And, she ends up dying. And it did bother me until New Nightmare came out. And I know that's a totally different universe. But just the fact that Heather Langenkamp was back in the series, I was like, okay, all right, then I can forgive Part 3 now. But I did hold a grudge for a little bit. To be honest with you, I think the only death that didn't quite bother me from one movie to the next was Rachel in Part 5 of Halloween. And it was only because I think the actress is great. I think she's awesome, and she seems like really nice person and everything. But I just wasn't the biggest Rachel fan in Halloween 4, so I actually didn't mind them switching it up to Tina. So I think that's the only.
I love Tina in Part 5.
It's the only, I think, death from of a survivor of a previous movie that I didn't quite mind as much. But for the most part, my mindset is if you survive one movie, I think you should get to survive permanently because it's not fair to kill you off in the second one because then it makes your survival in the previous one pointless.
See, now I would disagree with that. And if we were talking about a film like or the Scream series, those are characters I wanted to see die because I just grew bored with them.
No, see, I wanted them to live.
Sydney and Dewey and Gail. I just kind of got tired of them.
I wanted them all to live until the very end because, they lived in Part 1 and all that jazz.
Cool. Okay. Well, shall we get on to some background?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. A little bit.
Nathan, do you have any background?
Well, the only background that I have.
That's not the answer I wanted.
That you want? No.
Yeah. But go on.
But I read an interview with Robert Englund when this movie was coming out, and obviously he was doing press for the movie, and he mentioned something about it being the best Nightmare on Elm Street movie. And I thought to myself, well, Joseph will agree with that.
And that's your background.
Yeah. Yeah.
I probably wouldn't have back then, but now I would say it's my favorite of the series just for how outlandish it is. So I would agree with him now.
Yeah, it's extremely outlandish to watch your daughter choke to death and do nothing. Like, what kind of horrible mother is this? The biggest crime of this movie is that she didn't die.
Yeah.
The redheaded mother, because she's so mean.
I think that would be a neat idea for a Nightmare on Elm Street film is that Freddy starts going after their parents and leaves these kids without, family atmosphere. I think that would be kind of a neat twist, going after the older people for a change.
Yeah.
Nathan, you need to let that go, that Greta scene. You need to let it go now.
Oh, see, I will. Once we stop talking about Nightmare on Elm Street 5, then I'll be okay. It really upset me.
Okay. Joseph, you sounded like you had some background for us.
Well, not necessarily background. We went to Monster Mania when Robert Englund was in attendance, and we met and hung out and spent a lot of time with Daniel Farrens, who did the Never Sleep Again documentary, which has a wealth of information I couldn't possibly repeat. But this is more of like an anecdote. It's me, Nathan, Amanda, David Millay, BTK, who was on the Axum episode, somebody else, a couple other people that we met through them. We all went to the California Pizza Kitchen with Daniel Farrens and Tommy Hudson, I think his name was, his writing partner anyway. we were at the California Pizza Kitchen. We were just kind of discussing the Never Sleeping in Elm Street documentary and Freddy in general. And BTK, the big joker that he is, just caused me to laugh out loud. He was talking to Daniel about the documentary. He's like, I got a bone to pick with you. You just skipped over Super Freddy entirely. Just at the top of his lungs in the restaurant, right in front of everybody. It's just kind of this laugh out loud humorous moment. I thought it was kind of funny.
I know that they do address it on Never Sleep Again, though.
I think his issue is that he loves Super Freddy so much because he's this big comic book nerd that he didn't spend enough time on Super Freddy. It's like a joke. Yeah.
Justin, do you have any background for us?
Just a couple of bits, because obviously I know that we don't tend to, with these big franchises, we've already had massive amounts of background that we don't go into, well, because there's so much of it. The Whit Hartford, who was played the kid Jacob, I looked up to see what else he'd done, to see if he had a career, and actually he's still acting, and I think he directs theatre in London and things like that. But he was one of his credits.
One of the Addams Family movies?
Yes, he was. Yes,
yeah.
But he's also one of his credits. He was a dancer in the Pharrell Williams Happy video, bizarrely. Oh. So, which I thought was quite strange. But I looked at sort of kind of the reviews of the film, and predictably, it didn't get very good reviews. I mean, Erik, I'm sure you've got some, you will have more background on this, but from what I could tell, I mean, the director said he was disappointed with how the film came out. He kind of, I paraphrase him, he sort of said that they turned an okay movie into an awful movie, but it was kind of meddled by New Line. And the MPA, I kind of guess, they said he literally cut the guts out of the movie, and so he was a bit embarrassed by it. Whether or not he still is, I don't know. But it was very rushed, and one of it, because I read the was it Robert Englund, autobiography or biography, and they were talking about how rushed these films were, because you always imagine they kind of like, because they're so special effects heavy that they're kind of big budget affairs, but all the money's on the screen really, and they've, you know, with the actors and you know, with when they see them interviewed, they sort of say they were kind of put up in budget hotels, and it was all very kind of low budget considering the amount of money they brought into New Line. They certainly weren't like treated like Hollywood stars or anything like that. It was very kind of low budgety films, and I think the film was shot in 4 weeks, wasn't it? So much so that they were setting up filming. The director had to sort of set up, film one scene and then rush next door to film another scene. So they were setting up the next scene while the first scene was filming and things like that. So it explains a lot about why the film has this kind of slightly demented, kind of unfinished feel to it.
Sorry, Justin. I was just going to mention, but you were talking about the director. One thing I was going to mention was that the director, Stephen Hawkins, he has a very good horror film pedigree. I mean, he did that Dangerous Game where those kids go into some kind of department store, like they break in and they're stalked by a killer.
Oh, the Australian one.
Yeah. That's actually a really good movie. He also directed one of my absolute favorite sequels, and it's kind of maligned and underrated, is Predator 2, which I think is, God, you know, I love the first Predator, but Predator 2 is just so balls to the wall in a different setting, just a completely different movie. I loved it. He directed Predator 2. I just think it's just so great. It's one I would actually want to pick for Patreon at some point. Although it's probably more slasher-esque than the original Predator. But anyway, he also directed a few episodes of Tales from the Crypt. So he's got a really good pedigree. He's a good fit for an Elm Street director.
Cool. Okay, well, that's kind of more or less the background I've got. So, Erik, do you want to take it away?
Okay, well, the budget was $8 million, and it made $22 million at the box office, which at that point was the lowest tally for an Elm Street film at the box office. It was released on August the 11th, 1989 in the US, but it wasn't released in the UK until May 1990. Which is, let me do my maths here, 9 months later, ironically, considering it's a dream child. And so, as I said, it didn't arrive at cinemas for me, so I saw it on VHS, which would have been probably late 1990 or early 1991. So it was a huge delay between me between that being released in the States and me finally being able to see it. It opened at number 3 in the box office, behind Parenthood, which was enjoying its second week at number 1, and The Abyss, which debuted that weekend also. It only lasted 2 weeks in the box office top 10, and as I said, it was the lowest grossing until Wes Craven's New Nightmare, which is the poorest performing of all the Elm Street films to date anyway. So Stephen Hopkins got this gig in February of 1989. He was signed on to do it, and it was in cinemas in August of that year. And as you said, it was filmed over 4 weeks, and he only had 4 weeks post-production on it as well. So it was very much rushed. One thing I never knew, and I only noticed it on this time around watching it again this week, is that Lisa Wilcox plays Amanda Kruger in the flashback scenes of the asylum at the start. I didn't twig that. I'm sure it's probably obvious to you guys, but I didn't notice. It's obviously a different actress playing Amanda Kruger for the rest of the film, but just for that one scene, it's Lisa Wilcox in a dual role. As I said, there was major cuts to the motorcycle death with Dan and Greta's death scenes as well. The MPAA sort of, came down heavy on them, and they were forced to do lots of cuts. The unrated version was released to VHS in the UK in 1989 and also in Australia, I believe. And all the scenes are readily available on YouTube if you want to have a look at them there. They go on maybe twice as long as they do in the theatrical cut. Michael Bailey Smith plays Super Freddy, as you said, the one who looks like the 1920s weightlifter. He's also the nudie man at the start, who we can see pashing and getting it on with Alice over the opening credits. He also went on to play Pluto in the Hills of Eyes remake in 2006. In 2000, this is just actress related. It's nothing to do with the actual filming of Elm Street 5. But Lisa Wilcox formed a company, a jewelry company, with Tuesday Night from Part 4. The company was called Toe Brights, but they had a big falling out. And Tuesday Night was fired in 2007, and the whole thing ended up in court in 2010. So apparently they hate each other now. Oh dear. This won lots of awards and was nominated for lots of awards at various sort of fantasy film festivals around the world in 1990, although it did get some Razzie Awards as well. Stephen Hopkins won the 1990 Fantasporto Awards Critics Award for director. He was also nominated for an International Fantasy Film Award for Best Film. It won a Razzie for Bruce Dickinson's solo version of Bring Your Daughter to the Slaughter, which is the track that he later re-recorded with his band Iron Maiden and had a number 1 hit with in the UK. But this version won a Razzie for Worst Original Song. Now, I don't know if it's actually in the film, but it's on the soundtrack that was released, as was there's another song was nominated for a Razzie as well, Cool Mo D, for a song called Let's Go. The only other thing I was going to mention was the original poster artwork for the film was banned. It was the usual. Who's the artist? His name is Matthew Peake. He did all the US artwork for the Elm Street series, and the original concept was Freddy was holding a bubble which contained a baby in a fetal position, but parental groups got together and said that's not right. Changed that, so it was the object in the bubble was changed to the demonic pram that we see in the film. The UK artwork I much prefer. It's done by Graham Humphreys. I don't know if you guys have ever seen this one, but it's got a pregnant Freddy on it, and it says "Congratulations, it's a nightmare." And Nightmare on Elm Street.
I haven't seen that. I don't think.
I think that's a terrific poster. And then the VHS art was different again. It was Freddy, doing the hush, kind of with his finger up to his lips above the nightmare pram, which I thought was a pretty good poster as well. And the tagline was, "Now Freddy's a daddy, he's killing for 2." That's all the background I have on the wonderful Nightmare on Elm Street 5, which got 3.5 levels of enthusiasm from us all.
Well, you know what time it is now.
Yes.
It's my joke of the week. It's so great and fantastic.
Did you know that the killer in Halloween didn't like the toilet humor of the killer in Nightmare on Elm Street? Yes, indeed, folks. Michael Tyers, when Freddy's cruder.
I like that one.
Just one sad trombone for today's joke.
Oh, thank you.
That's okay. Well, thank you. Okay, well, before we wrap up the show, let's go over to our Patreon feed just for a moment to see what's coming up. We have well, Erik, it's your choice coming up, isn't it?
Oh, yes.
For this month.
Yeah. If you like Nightmare on Elm Street 5, you're bound to like my next pick on Patreon, which is Dirty Dancing. Dirty Dancing.
Yay.
So excited.
Finally, Erik gets his moment in the sun.
Yeah.
I just want to mention real quick, we did have a little bit of feedback for Nightmare on Elm Street 5, but there was a little snafu on my end, so I lost it, unfortunately. I apologize. I'll be sure to read out any feedback you send our way on the next episode.
Never admit it's your fault. Always say something like, a raccoon did it.
Yeah.
Erik did it.
I don't want to say, your guys, I just didn't read your feedback because Justin did it.
Hey, Erik.
Try to be honest about it.
Tomorrow night, they're playing Dirty Dancing at the theater here in town, so I'm going to go see it on the big screen. I'm excited.
Which movie theater?
I don't know. Wes bought the tickets. I think it's the one in Eastridge.
When we were recording our last episode this time last week, I had a look on Facebook while we were nattering away, and Dirty Dancing was playing in Dublin at that very moment in a cinema.
Oh, really? Well,
yes.
It's weird. It's weird that we're going to cover that, and there's some sort of renaissance going on with it.
Well, tune into Patreon if you want to hear that. And also, we have a top 3 coming up of goriest moments or favourite goral moments.
No, I think we changed that.
Oh.
Because Amanda's going to be on the Dirty Dancing.
Oh, it's the hottest characters.
And she's going to be on that top 3, I believe. So it's the top 3 hottest horror movie characters.
Oh, I thought Nathan said the hottest hair. That would be a good one.
That'd be worse. That'd be really difficult.
The best hairdos.
Part 4.
Roz.
Yeah.
Roz has the best hair.
She boils it.
Yes. Also, Justin, the woman in Dark Sanity has good hair because she washes it in a bird bath.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Well, yes, if you want to hear that and more of our talk on hot horror hair and bodies, then you should head over to our Patreon feed. And thank you ever so much again, as ever, for people who have supported us each month. And this is how you can do so, and also how you can get in contact with the show if Joseph doesn't delete it first.
Thank you for listening to The Hysteria Continues. Be sure to search for us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you enjoy our show, consider becoming a Patreon subscriber. That's patreon.com/The Hysteria Continues. You can email us at thehysteriacontinues@gmail.com.
Okay, well...
we should also mention, Justin, we were talking before the show about the AMA.
Yes, we are going to be doing a video cast for YouTube, and we're doing a Ask Us Anything segment. So if you head over to, you can email us a question for any of us. You can ask us anything, and we will be reading those out on video and doing a kind of Brady Bunch style thing. So that should be a lot of fun. So either check that out or have a look at our Facebook feed for more details. So that'll be upcoming shortly. But to cap things off, Joseph, I think it's your turn for our next pick. So what's it going to be?
Well, I've been struggling all week between 4 different films. I still have a few Alishan picks left, but I'm going to skip them one more week. We're going to go from one dream logic to the next. We're going to cover a film I think we've all talked about a lot, and it's even gotten some of us into a bit of a tizzy at some point. But I think it's finally time we covered Scream from 1981.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Yes.
Oh, my God. I'm so excited.
Yes, well, that should be an interesting choice.
Background for this.
I know somebody we can invite onto that show.
Yeah, me too.
Oh, no, maybe not, actually. No,
maybe that's for off air. Yes, well, join us for the most exciting camping trip of your life next time on 1981 Scream. Okay, well, what are we playing out with, Erik?
Okay, well, as I said, there's a Nightmare on Elm Street 5 soundtrack out there, but I think it consists of songs that actually aren't in the film. So I've chosen one from that, and it's by the wonderful Samantha Fox. She was a lady who used to get her boobies out in the tabloid newspapers in the 80s, but then she had a pop career. And this is called Now I Lay Me Down.
Okay, but that sounds very doesn't sound very Sam Fox, does it?
Samantha Fox, the one that's in Not to Dismember.
No, that's the porn star Samantha Fox.
Oh,
is there? Okay. Yeah, she was a porn star.
I remember like 85 or 1985 or 86 or so. I used to have a bunch of Samantha Fox posters in my bedroom.
Which Samantha Fox? The singer,
the model. Well, yeah, the singer model. Yeah.
You're dirty, Joseph.
Well, she had that.
I was like a 10-year-old kid, becoming interested in women. Sue me.
Well, she had that wonderful song, didn't she? Hurt me, but the pants stay on.
Yep.
So this sounds like
she decided she liked ladies in the end anyway, so she's off limits.
Yeah. So, okay, well, we're playing out with that. And well, thank you for joining us back on Elm Street 1. Not last time. I'd always say it's last time, but we'll be back on Elm Street probably before you know it. Back for Freddy's Dead at some point this year, I'm sure. So thank you for listening to The Hysteria Continues. And if you enjoy the show, then leave a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to us, because obviously we'd love more people to enjoy the show. And we'll catch you next time on the dream side of The Hysteria Continues. So say goodbye to the good people.
Bye.
Bye, good people.
Bye, bitch.